Indian Territory, 1879. A woman clutches four small hands as she steps down from a weathered train onto the platform of a frontier station. The journey has left dark circles under her eyes, but determination burns within them. In her satchel, she carries herbs, tinctures, and a daguerreotype of the man who promised her a new life. The four identical boys, barely 5 years old, peer out with curious eyes at the dusty town that was meant to be their salvation. But what awaits isn't the welcoming arms of a prosperous doctor and loving husband. Instead, she finds shocked whispers, turned backs, and a letter revealing painful truths. Her intended has fled, unwilling to father four ready-made sons, in a land where resources are scarce and survival demands every ounce of strength. A woman alone with 4 children is viewed as an impossible burden. As the train whistle signals its departure, taking with it her last connection to the life she left behind, fate intervenes in the form of a Cherokee chief seeking help for his ailing daughter. His weathered eyes see what others cannot. The healing touch that flows from her hands and the strength that radiates from her spirit. What begins as desperation will forge an unexpected destiny that challenges the prejudices of 2 worlds. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Clara Sullivan gathered her skirts with one hand while keeping a watchful eye on her 4 sons as the train hissed to a stop at Willow Creek Station. After 17 days of travel from Pennsylvania, every muscle in her body ached with exhaustion, but her spirit remained unbroken. At 32, she had outlived both a husband and the sympathies of her Eastern community, who whispered that a widow with identical quadruplets was an oddity best kept at a distance. With her late husband's medical books and her grandmother's knowledge of herbal remedies as her only inheritance, Clara had corresponded for 8 months with Dr. Thomas Blackwood, a frontier physician seeking a wife with medical knowledge to help in his practice. Stay close, she instructed the boys, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, named in a moment of religious fervor by her late husband before typhoid claimed him 3 years prior. The children, with their shock of copper hair and solemn blue eyes, nodded in unison, a habit that often unnerved strangers, but which Clara found endearing. Willow Creek appeared little more than a collection of wooden structures arranged haphazardly along a wide dirt street. A general store, livery stable, small church, and what appeared to be a saloon comprised the heart of the settlement. Beyond these, scattered cabins and houses stretched toward the surrounding oak and hickory forests that gave the town its name. The air carried the scent of wood smoke and livestock, so different from the coal-stained skies of Pittsburgh she had left behind. As Clara and her sons descended from the train, she scanned the modest crowd for Dr. Blackwood, who had described himself as tall with a dignified bearing and spectacles. His most recent letter had confirmed he would meet her today, April 18th, bringing a wagon to transport them to his home and practice 5 miles outside of town. "Are you looking for someone, Mom?" asked the station master, a thin man with a handlebar mustache, who eyed the 4 identical boys with undisguised curiosity. "Dr. Thomas Blackwood," Clara replied, adjusting her worn bonnet. "He's expecting us today." The station master's expression shifted to one that Clara had seen too often, discomfort mixed with pity. "Perhaps you should come inside the station. House, Ma'am, there's something you should know." A cold dread settled in Clara's stomach as she followed the man, ushering her sons ahead of her. Inside the small office, he handed her an envelope addressed in a familiar hand. Dr. Blackwood's neat, precise script. "This came 3 days ago with instructions to give it to a Mrs. Sullivan, arriving on today's train," the station master explained, busying himself at his desk to offer a semblance of privacy. Clara broke the seal, her fingers trembling slightly. As she unfolded the letter, "Mrs. Sullivan, it is with profound regret that I must withdraw my proposal of marriage. Recent information regarding your circumstances, specifically the presence of 4 children rather than the small family mentioned in your letters, makes our arrangement untenable. The demands of my practice cannot accommodate such an immediate and substantial family. The good people of Willow Creek will assist in arranging your return passage eastward. I have enclosed $20 toward your expenses and offer my sincere apologies for any inconvenience. Respectfully, Dr. Thomas Blackwood. Clara read the letter twice, her breath catching in her throat. $20 and sincere apologies for upending her entire life. She had sold what little she owned, spent nearly every penny on train passage, and burned her bridges in Pittsburgh. There was nothing to return to. "Mama, I'm hungry," whispered Luke, the quietest of her sons, tugging at her skirt. The station master cleared his throat. "Train back east leaves tomorrow morning, ma'am. The boarding house across the way might take you in for the night, though Mrs. Patterson charges $1 a head. $5 for a single night's lodging would consume a quarter of what remained for their return journey, a journey to nowhere." Clara straightened her shoulders and tucked the letter into her pocket. "Thank you for your concern, but we won't be returning east," she stated with more confidence than she felt. "Is there anyone in town seeking household help? I have some skill. With medicine and herbs as well." The station master's expression grew uncomfortable. "Willow Creek's a small settlement, ma'am. Most folks barely sustain themselves, let alone hire help, and 4 young boys." He trailed off, the implication clear. 4 additional mouths would strain any household beyond reason. As Clara guided her children back to the platform where their trunks waited, whispers followed them. The few townspeople present assessed her with unconcealed judgment. A woman with 4 small children and no husband was an impossible burden in a frontier community where survival demanded every ounce of strength. "Those must be the Sullivan boys," a woman murmured to her companion. "Identical as peas in a pod. Unnatural, if you ask me." "Poor Dr. Blackwood," came the reply. "Can't blame him for reconsidering. No man wants to start with another's brood, let alone 4 all at once." Clara's cheeks burned, but she kept her gaze forward, helping her sons sit on one of the trunks while she considered their dwindling options. The $20 would feed them for perhaps 2 weeks if she was frugal, but shelter remained the immediate concern. The train whistle sounded, a warning of imminent departure. Clara watched it with a strange detachment, that final link to her past life preparing to vanish over the horizon. The boys sensed her distress, huddling closer together, in their matching grey coats, too warm for the mild spring afternoon, but the only travelling clothes she had been able to afford. "Mrs. Sullivan," a deep voice broke through her thoughts. Clara turned to find a tall Native American man regarding her with curious intensity. His black hair, streaked with silver, was pulled back neatly, and he wore a blend of traditional Cherokee clothing and elements of European dress, a fine cotton shirt under a traditional vest, adorned with intricate beadwork. A silver medallion hung at his throat, marking him as a person of significance. "I am Chief Joseph Whitefeather," he said in perfect, lightly accented English. "I overheard your conversation. You have knowledge of medicine?" Clara nodded, suddenly conscious of her travel-stained appearance. "I assisted my late husband, who was a doctor. I also know remedies passed down from my grandmother." The chief's dark eyes studied her, then moved to the 4 boys who stared back at him without fear. Something in his expression softened momentarily. "My daughter lies ill in our village 6 miles from here, 3 days now, burning with fever. Our medicine woman has tried traditional remedies without success." "What are her symptoms?" Clara asked, medical training overriding her immediate concerns. "High fever that rises with the evening, skin with small red spots, cough that brings pain to her chest." Clara's mind catalogued possibilities. "How old is your daughter?" 17 summers. She is strong, but this sickness—" He paused, and Clara saw the concern of a father beneath the dignified exterior. "Our people have suffered from white man's diseases before. I fear what this might become." Clara knelt to open one of her trunks, extracting a small wooden case. Inside were tinctures and dried herbs, carefully labeled in her precise handwriting. These might help reduce her fever, though I would need to examine her to be certain of the ailment. Chief Whitefeather watched her hands as she sorted through the remedies, his gaze lingering on the careful way she handled each bottle. "You have a healer's touch," he observed quietly. "I can see it in how you move your fingers." Clara looked up, surprised. Few had ever noticed that quality in her, the intuitive connection between her hands and healing that went beyond mere technical knowledge. "My wagon is at the trading post," Chief Whitefeather continued. "If you will come to our village and tend to my daughter, I offer you shelter until you determine your path forward." It was not a permanent solution, but faced with alternatives that ranged from poor to non-existent, Clara made her decision. "My sons and I would be grateful for your hospitality, Chief Whitefeather. I will do everything in my power to help your daughter." As they gathered her trunks, Clara noticed the station master and several townspeople watching, with expressions ranging from shock to disapproval. A white woman and her children going willingly to a Cherokee village defied their expectations and social boundaries. "The Indians keep to themselves mostly," the station master warned, approaching with reluctance. "Not proper for a white woman alone." Chief Whitefeather regarded the man with cool dignity. "Mrs. Sullivan will be honored as a healer in our village. No harm will come to her or her children." Clara lifted her chin, meeting the station master's gaze directly. "Thank you for your concern, but I believe this is Providence at work. Good day." As they departed the station, Clara felt a strange mixture of trepidation and hope. Behind them lay the remnants of broken promises, and ahead, uncertainty. Yet something in Chief Whitefeather's respectful demeanor and the genuine concern for his daughter gave her courage. Her boys walked beside her, unusually quiet, but taking in everything with wide-eyed curiosity. The journey to an unknown future had begun with rejection, but perhaps it would continue with purpose. Clara Sullivan, mail-order bride no longer, followed the Cherokee chief toward his wagon, her precious sons and meager possessions in tow, the weight of the healing knowledge she carried suddenly feeling less like a burden and more like a gift, about to find its purpose. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Chief Whitefeather's wagon rumbled along a trail that veered away from the main road, cutting through stands of oak and hickory. Clara held Matthew and Mark on her lap, while Luke and John sat beside her on the wooden bench, their eyes wide as they watched the landscape transform. Small farms gave way to denser woodland, and the path narrowed as they traveled further from Willow Creek. "Your sons," the chief observed after a period of contemplative silence. "They have the same face, but different spirits." Clara smiled, surprised by his perception. Most people never bothered to look beyond the identical features. "Yes, Matthew is the protector, always watching over his brothers. Mark asks questions about everything he sees. Luke feels things deeply but keeps quiet, and John," she chuckled softly, "John finds mischief where none should exist." As if to confirm her assessment, John was already leaning dangerously far over the side of the wagon, attempting to grab a flowering branch. Clara gently pulled him back. "4 spirits from one womb is a powerful medicine," Chief Whitefeather said. "Among my people, such a birth would be seen as a sign from the Creator." "In Pittsburgh, it was seen as an oddity," Clara replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "People treated them as curiosities rather than children." The chief nodded, understanding in his dark eyes. "People fear what they do not understand, but fear can be the beginning of wisdom if one has the courage to move beyond it." The philosophical observation reminded Clara that this man was not only a father worried about his daughter, but a leader responsible for guiding his people through changing and difficult times. She wondered what circumstances had led him to seek help outside his tradition from a white woman he'd never met. "Your daughter," Clara ventured. "What is her name?" "Morning Star," he replied, a softening in his voice. Her mother named her for the bright light that shone during her birth, and her mother. A shadow crossed his face. "She walks with the ancestors these past 5 winters, smallpox that came with traders from the east." Clara nodded, understanding both the medical reality and the grief beneath his words. "I'm sorry. I lost my husband to typhoid 3 years ago." They shared a moment of silent recognition. 2 parents who had faced loss, yet continued forward for the sake of their children. The Xian trail began to slope downward into a valley cradled between gentle hills. A stream curved through the center, and along its banks stood a village of structures that blended traditional Cherokee dwellings with more permanent log cabins. Smoke rose from cook fires, and Clara could see children playing near the water's edge while women worked at outdoor tasks. Men carved wood or repaired tools under the shade of massive oak trees. As the wagon approached, activities paused. Curious eyes followed their progress. Some wary, others merely interested in the arrival of strangers. Clara felt a moment of uncertainty. Would she be welcome here as a healer, or viewed with suspicion as an outsider? "Our village is called Peaceful." "Waters," Chief Whitefeather explained, as they rolled to a stop near a cabin larger than the others, distinguished by intricate carvings around its doorway. "We have been on this land for 5 generations, though this settlement is newer. The government has pushed us many times, but this valley we have managed to keep." Clara heard the pride and defiance in his words. This wasn't just any land. It was a hard-won sanctuary in a time when native territories were constantly shrinking under government pressure. A woman emerged from the chief's cabin, her silver-streaked hair bound in a single braid. Her face, lined with age and experience, held both authority and concern. "This is Grandmother Willow," the chief said with evident respect. "She is our medicine woman and my mother's sister." The older woman studied Clara and her sons with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "You bring the white healer," she stated rather than asked, speaking directly to her nephew. "She has knowledge we may need," Chief Whitefeather replied simply. "Morning Star's fever has not broken." Grandmother Willow's gaze lingered on Clara's hands, then on the identical faces of the 4 boys. Something flickered in her expression, recognition, perhaps, or confirmation of some private thought. "4 spirits that are one and yet separate," she murmured. "The old stories speak of such power." She gestured toward the cabin. "Come, Morning Star grows weaker with the setting sun." Clara helped her sons from the wagon, instructing them in a low voice to stay together and behave respectfully. Chief Whitefeather spoke briefly to a young man who approached, directing him to bring Clara's trunks to a small cabin nearby. Inside the chief's dwelling, Clara's eyes adjusted to the dimmer light. The interior was larger than it appeared from outside, with a main room containing a central fire pit and separate sleeping areas partitioned by woven screens. The furnishings blended traditional Cherokee items with objects acquired through trade: a carved wooden table, chairs with woven seats, colorful blankets, and practical cooking implements. On a bed of furs in a corner lay a young woman, her features strikingly similar to her father's, but softened by youth and femininity. Even flushed with fever, Morning Star possessed a quiet beauty. Her breathing came in labored gasps, and her hands plucked restlessly at the blanket covering her. Clara immediately set her medical bag beside the bed and placed a gentle hand on the girl's forehead. The skin burned beneath her touch. "How long has the rash been present?" she asked, noting the scattered red spots on Morning Star's neck and chest. 3 days, Grandmother Willow answered. It began after the fever. I have tried willow bark tea, raspberry leaves, and poultices of yarrow. The fever lowers briefly but returns stronger each night. Clara nodded, recognizing the older woman's considerable knowledge of herbal medicine. May I? She asked, gesturing toward the girl's clothing. With Grandmother Willow's help, she examined Morning Star thoroughly, noting the pattern of the rash, the congestion in her lungs, and the swollen glands in her neck. The symptoms pointed clearly to scarlet fever, a disease Clara had seen multiple times in Pittsburgh. She has what we call scarlet fever, Clara explained, washing her hands in a basin of water. The rash is distinctive. Without proper treatment, it can damage the heart or kidneys, but caught early enough, she returned to her bag, extracting several small bottles. This is a tincture of echinacea to strengthen her ability to fight the illness. This contains extract of elderberry to reduce the fever. And this, she held up a third bottle, is a special preparation my grandmother taught me, using bone set and white oak bark to address the infection in her throat. Grandmother Willow took each bottle, uncorking them to smell the contents with an expert's discernment. Strong medicine, she acknowledged. How do you administer them? Clara explained. The proper dosages and timing, impressed by the older woman's quick understanding. Together, they prepared the first treatment, mixing the tinctures with water and honey to make them more palatable. Chief Whitefeather watched silently from the doorway as Clara gently raised his daughter's head, helping her swallow the medicine. Morning Star's eyes fluttered open briefly, dark and confused with fever. She needs to drink as much water as possible, Clara instructed. The fever dries her body, and we'll need clean cloths soaked in cool water for her forehead and wrists. The next hour passed in quiet efficiency as Clara demonstrated proper care. Techniques. She showed Grandmother Willow how to recognize improvements in Morning Star's condition and what warning signs might indicate a worsening. As twilight descended outside, Clara suddenly remembered her sons. She turned to find all four sitting quietly on a woven mat near the door, watching the proceedings with solemn interest. Despite their natural restlessness, they had somehow understood the gravity of the situation. Your children show respect, Chief Whitefeather observed. They have old souls in young bodies. Before Clara could respond, a young woman appeared in the doorway. The evening meal is prepared, she announced softly, and the visitor's cabin is ready. Clara hesitated, reluctant to leave her patient. Go, Grandmother Willow urged. Feed your children and rest. I will watch Morning Star tonight and follow your instructions. You have shown me what to do. I'll return in a few hours to check her progress, Clara promised, gathering her sons with a gesture. Outside, twilight had transformed the village. Cook fires cast golden light against the deepening blue of evening, and the air carried the scent of unfamiliar but appetizing food. Clara followed Chief Whitefeather to a communal eating area where several families had gathered. Their arrival caused a momentary lull in conversation. Clara felt the weight of curiosity and assessment in the villagers' gazes, particularly as they took in her four identical sons. Chief Whitefeather spoke briefly in Cherokee, explaining her presence, and the atmosphere relaxed slightly. The meal consisted of corn cakes, a rich stew of beans and squash, and tender venison. Clara was surprised when her typically finicky sons ate eagerly, especially enjoying the sweet corn cakes drizzled with wild honey. Your boys have good appetites, observed a woman who introduced herself as Rising Moon, the chief's sister. Strong boys grow from good food. Thank you for sharing your meal with us, Clara replied. We're grateful for your hospitality. Rising Moon smiled, the expression warming her reserved features. My brother says you have the healing touch. That you might help Morning Star, where our own medicine has failed. I hope so, Clara answered honestly. "The next day or two will tell us if the treatment is working." After the meal, Rising Moon led them to a small cabin that had been prepared for their use. It was a simple structure, but clean and thoughtfully arranged, with fresh sleeping pallets, a water jug, and a small fire already crackling in the stone hearth. "It's not what you're accustomed to," Rising Moon apologized, "but it will shelter you from the night air." "It's perfect," Clara assured her, thinking of the cramped, soot-stained rooms they had occupied in Pittsburgh. "More comfortable than many places we've slept." When Rising Moon had departed, Clara helped her exhausted sons prepare for bed. The events of the day had finally caught up with them, and even John, the most energetic, could barely keep his eyes open as she tucked the blankets around them. "Are we going to live with the Indians now, Mama?" Mark asked, his natural curiosity asserting itself despite his fatigue. "For a little while," Clara answered carefully, "while I help the chief's daughter." "Get well." "I like it here," Luke said softly. "It smells like trees instead of smoke." Clara smiled, stroking his copper hair. "Yes, it does. Now sleep, all of you. Tomorrow will bring its own adventures." When the boys had drifted off, Clara stepped outside the cabin. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet darkness like diamonds on black cloth. The village had settled into evening rhythms, quiet conversations around dying fires, the occasional laugh or call carrying in the still air. In the distance, she could see a light still burning in the chief's cabin. Morning Star fighting her. Fever, Grandmother Willow keeping watch. Clara would return soon to check on her patient, but for this moment she allowed herself to absorb the peace of this unexpected sanctuary. 24 hours earlier, she had been on a train, rushing toward what she believed would be security and purpose. Now those illusions had been stripped away, leaving uncertainty, but also possibility. Whatever the coming days might bring, tonight her children slept safely, their bellies full. In a world that had shown them little kindness, it was no small. Blessing dawn broke over peaceful waters with a chorus of birdsong. Clara had spent much of the night moving between her cabin and the chief's dwelling, checking on Morning Star every few hours. The girl's fever had not broken, but neither had it worsened, a cautious sign of hope. Clara had finally returned to her own bed just before sunrise, exhausted but determined to maintain the treatment schedule. She awoke to find her sons already dressed and peering curiously out the cabin door. The village had come alive with morning activities, women carrying water from the stream, men preparing for hunting or farming tasks, children performing their assigned chores. "Mama, there are boys fishing," John exclaimed, pointing toward the stream, where several Cherokee children were casting handmade lines into the clear water. "Can we go watch?" Matthew asked, his protective nature momentarily overcome by childish interest. Clara hesitated. They were guests here, and she wasn't certain of the proper boundaries. Before she could decide, a shadow fell across the doorway. Rising Moon stood there, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. "Good morning," the Cherokee woman greeted them. "I've brought cornmeal porridge and berries for your breakfast. The boys must be hungry after their journey." "That's very kind," Clara said, accepting the basket gratefully. "I was just about to check on Morning Star." Rising Moon's expression grew serious. "My brother has been with her all night. The fever still burns, but Grandmother Willow says there is a new strength in her breathing since your medicine." Clara nodded, hope rising cautiously. "That's a good sign. The remedies need time to work fully." Rising Moon glanced at the four boys, who were watching her with identical expressions of curiosity. A smile softened her features. "Perhaps your sons would like to see the village while you tend to my niece. The children here are curious about them, though too shy to approach directly." Clara considered the offer. Her sons had been cooped up on trains and in stations for weeks, with little opportunity for normal childhood activities. Would someone watch over them? They can be energetic. My son Eagle Feather is 14 winters, Rising Moon replied. He is responsible and speaks good English from the mission school. He can show them around and make sure they stay out of mischief. After giving her sons firm instructions to mind their manners and obey Eagle Feather, Clara watched them depart. With Rising Moon, despite their identical appearance, each boy's distinct personality showed in his gait. Matthew walking tall with responsibility, Mark already pointing and questioning, Luke staying close to Rising Moon's side, and John practically skipping with excitement. At the chief's cabin, Clara found Grandmother Willow preparing fresh herbal infusions, while Chief Whitefeather sat beside his daughter's bed, his strong hand holding her smaller one. He looked up as Clara entered, exhaustion and worry etched into his features. "There has been little change," he said quietly. Clara approached Morning Star, placing a practiced hand on her forehead. "The fever remains, but it hasn't increased. That's encouraging." She checked the girl's pulse, finding it slightly stronger than the previous night. "Her body is fighting. Now we must help it fight more effectively." Under Grandmother Willow's watchful eye, Clara administered the morning doses of her remedies. The older woman had prepared additional willow bark tea, which Clara approved as a supplement to her own medicines. The combination of traditional Cherokee healing and Clara's medical knowledge created a treatment more comprehensive than either alone. As they worked, Clara became aware of the chief observing her hands, the gentle efficiency with which she mixed remedies, the intuitive way her fingers sensed heat and pulse, the soothing touch that seemed to calm Morning Star even in her delirium. "You have the gift," he said finally. "The true healer's touch. It is rare among your people." Clara looked up, surprised by the personal observation. "My grandmother had it. She was a midwife in Ireland before coming to America. People said she could ease pain with just her hands." She hesitated, then added, "The doctors my husband worked with dismissed such things as superstition, but he recognized there was something to it." "The mission priests call it superstition too," Chief Whitefeather replied, "but they cannot explain why some healers succeed where others fail, even using the same remedies." Grandmother Willow gave a soft grunt of agreement as she arranged cool cloths on Morning Star's forehead. "The medicine is in the heart and hands as much as in the plants. This one understands." She nodded toward Clara with approval. After completing the morning treatment, Clara asked to wash up before checking on her sons. Chief Whitefeather directed her to the stream, where designated areas had been established for different uses: drinking water collection upstream, washing midstream, and other activities further down. As she knelt by the water's edge, Clara caught fragments of conversation from two women washing clothes nearby. Though they spoke in Cherokee, their tone and occasional glances in her direction made their skepticism clear. She wasn't entirely welcome by everyone in the village, which was hardly surprising. Trust would have to be earned. A shadow fell across the water. Clara looked up to find a powerfully built man standing a few feet away, his arms crossed over his chest. Unlike the chief, who blended traditional and European clothing, this man wore buckskins and kept his hair in traditional warrior braids adorned with a single eagle feather. His face was set in lines of disapproval. "My father should not have brought you here," he said without preamble, his English accented but clear. Clara rose slowly, meeting his gaze directly. "You must be Morning Star's brother." "I am Black Wolf, son of Chief Whitefeather and war leader of Peaceful Waters." His dark eyes studied her with unconcealed suspicion. "Your people bring sickness to our people, and now you claim to cure what you caused." "I didn't bring this illness," Clara replied calmly. Understanding his anger came from fear for his sister, "but I have seen it before and successfully treated it. I want to help Morning Star recover." "With white man's medicine? The same medicine that failed when smallpox took our mother?" Clara recognized the deeper wound beneath his accusation. I use both my grandmother's remedies, which come from the old country across the ocean, and knowledge from medical books. Some illnesses can be treated successfully, others still defeat our best efforts. She paused, then added quietly, I lost my husband to disease despite everything we tried. I understand your fear. Something in her honest acknowledgement seemed to reach him. Black Wolf's rigid posture relaxed slightly. My father sees something special in you. Grandmother Willow does as well. They believe your 4 sons are a medicine sign. His tone suggested he remained unconvinced. They're just boys, Clara said simply. Special to me, but still just children who need a home and security, like any others. She gathered her things, preparing to leave. I respect your concern for your sister and your people. I would feel the same in your position. But I promise you, I'm using every skill I possess to help Morning Star. Black Wolf considered her words, then gave a small nod. Not acceptance, but perhaps a willingness to suspend judgment temporarily. We will see what your medicine achieves, he said, turning to leave. Clara watched him stride away, understanding that she had encountered another complex layer of her new situation. Chief Whitefeather may have welcomed her, but his son, a leader in his own right among the younger men, remained wary. It was a dynamic she would need to navigate carefully. When she returned to the village center, Clara found her sons in the midst of an impromptu game with several Cherokee children. Despite the language barrier, they had developed a form of tag that involved much running and laughter. Eagle Feather, a lanky teenager with watchful eyes, supervised from nearby. Your sons make friends easily, observed Chief Whitefeather, who had emerged from his cabin to observe the children's play. They do not see differences as adults do. Children are wiser than we give them credit for, Clara replied, watching. As Luke, usually the shyest of her boys, showed a small Cherokee girl how to play pat-a-cake. They see the person, not the circumstances, the chief nodded thoughtfully. A wisdom we often lose with age. He glanced toward where Black Wolf stood at the edge of the village, still watching Clara with suspicion. My son is protective of our ways. He has seen much change in his 25 winters, most of it harmful to our people. I understand his caution, Clara assured him. I would feel the same toward strangers if our positions were reversed. Their conversation was interrupted by Eagle Feather's approach. The boys are hungry, he reported with the serious responsibility of youth, and Morning Star is asking for water. Clara's heart lifted at this news. She's awake, truly conscious? The chief was already moving toward his cabin with renewed energy. Clara hurried after him, pausing only to instruct Eagle Feather to take her sons to Rising Moon for lunch. Inside, they found Morning Star indeed awake, her dark eyes clearer though still glazed with fever. Grandmother Willow was helping her sip. Water from a clay cup, father, the girl whispered, her voice hoarse but recognizable. Chief Whitefeather took his daughter's hand, relief evident in every line of his body. Morning Star, you return to us. Clara approached the bedside, clinically assessing the improvements. The rash had stopped spreading, and though fever still flushed the girl's cheeks, her breathing came easier. How do you feel? She asked gently. Morning. Star's gaze shifted to Clara, confusion evident. Who? This is Mrs. Sullivan, her father explained. She has brought medicine to fight your fever. Recognition dawned in the girl's eyes. I heard your voice. In the darkness. You said I was strong enough to fight. Clara smiled, touched that her words of encouragement, spoken when she thought Morning Star unconscious, had somehow reached her. And you are fighting beautifully. The worst has passed, I believe, though recovery will take time. As Clara checked Morning Star's pulse and examined her throat, noting with satisfaction that the dangerous swelling had subsided, she became aware of another presence in the doorway. Black Wolf stood watching, his expression unreadable, as he observed his sister's improvement. His eyes met Clara's briefly, acknowledging without words that her treatment was working. It wasn't friendship or even trust yet, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of suspicion that might, with time and patience, widen into understanding. Outside, the village had gathered for the midday meal. Word of Morning Star's improvement spread quickly, bringing a subtle shift in how the villagers regarded Clara. Nods of acknowledgement greeted her as she joined her sons at the communal eating area. An elderly man offered her the choicest portion of stewed rabbit from his own bowl. A young mother shyly presented her infant for Clara's examination when she noticed a rash on the baby's arm. Small gestures, but significant. Clara recognized them as the first tentative steps toward acceptance. Not because she was white or educated, or even especially skilled, but because she had proven willing to use whatever knowledge she possessed to help someone in need. In a frontier community, whether white or Cherokee, such practical compassion transcended other differences. As the day progressed, Clara divided her time between caring for Morning Star and establishing a routine for her sons. The boys had already begun absorbing Cherokee words from their new playmates, their young minds flexible in ways adult minds rarely managed. By sundown, they could count to 10 in Cherokee and had learned the names of several animals. That evening, as Clara settled her exhausted sons into their pallets, Matthew asked the question that had been forming in her own mind. "Are we staying here, Mama, with the Cherokee people?" Clara smoothed his copper hair back from his forehead. "For now, at least until Morning Star recovers fully. After that," she paused, the future beyond that point still unclear. "After that, we'll see what path opens before us." It wasn't the definitive answer a mother should provide, but it was honest. For the first time since her husband's death, Clara found herself truly living day by day, responding to circumstances rather than desperately trying to control them. Strangely, there was freedom in this uncertainty, a lifting of the constant anxiety that had accompanied her carefully laid plans. As moonlight filtered through the cabin's single window, Clara stepped outside once more to check the night sky. The stars seemed impossibly bright here, away from city smoke and gas lamps. She thought of Dr. Blackwood in his comfortable house, unaware of what his rejection had set in motion. Had he done her a favor in the end? The question hung in the still night air. Unanswerable but intriguing, from the direction of the chief's cabin came the low, melodic sound of chanting, Grandmother Willow performing healing songs for Morning Star. The ancient words, though incomprehensible, to Clara's ears, carried conviction and power. She found herself standing still, letting the rhythm wash over her, connecting her to something older and deeper than her own understanding. In that moment, Clara Sullivan felt the first fragile roots of belonging begin to form, not in the way she had expected or planned, but in a way that might, with nurturing and patience, grow into something enduring. Over the next 5 days, Morning Star's recovery progressed steadily. The fever broke completely on the 3rd morning, and by the 5th day, she was able to sit up and take broth and soft foods. Clara maintained a careful regimen of herbal treatments, supplemented by Grandmother Willow's traditional remedies, creating a healing partnership that bridged 2 worlds of medicine. As Morning Star regained her strength, she revealed herself to be a thoughtful, intelligent young woman with a natural curiosity about Clara's life and medical knowledge. During their time together, she began teaching Clara Cherokee words and phrases, delighting in her students' earnest attempts at pronunciation. "No, no," she laughed softly one afternoon, as Clara struggled with a particularly difficult word. "From here," she touched her throat, "not from your nose." Clara tried again, producing a sound that made Morning Star smile. "Better. Soon you will speak like Cherokee woman." "I doubt that," Clara replied, adjusting the poultice on Morningstar's chest. "But I appreciate your patience with my attempts." Morningstar watched Clara's hands as they worked, her dark eyes thoughtful. "My father says your hands have medicine in them, not just the herbs, but in how they touch." Clara paused, considering how to respond. "My grandmother believed that healing comes partly from knowledge and partly from intention, the desire to ease suffering. Perhaps that's what people sense." "It is more," Morningstar insisted. "Some touch merely touches the skin. Yours reaches deeper." She hesitated, then added, "The women talk about your sons, 4 spirits from one birth. They say it is powerful." "Medicine. Does that frighten them?" Clara asked, thinking of the occasional wary glances still directed toward her boys. "Some, yes. Others are curious." "Grandmother Willow says the Creator sent you here for a purpose beyond healing me." Before Clara could pursue this intriguing statement, voices rose outside, men returning from hunting. Among them was Black Wolf, whose attitude toward Clara had evolved from open suspicion to grudging acknowledgement. He had yet to speak directly to her since their encounter by the stream, but Clara often felt his watchful gaze when she moved through the village. Morningstar noticed her attention shift. "My brother is slow to trust," she said softly. "But he is fair. When he sees truth, he accepts it, however difficult." "Your illness worried him greatly," Clara observed, packing her herbal supplies. "He has been protector since our mother died. Sometimes he forgets I am a woman now, not a child." Morningstar's expression grew wistful. "He fears change because he has seen what change has cost our people." Clara understood this sentiment all too well. Her husband had often spoken of the resistance he encountered when introducing new medical techniques, not from ignorance, but from the very human fear of abandoning the familiar, even when something better was offered. Later that afternoon, as Clara helped her sons learn simple fishing techniques from Eagle Feather by the stream, Chief Whitefeather approached with an unexpected invitation. "Tonight there will be a gathering," he explained, "to give thanks for Morningstar's recovery and to ask blessings on the planting season ahead. You and your sons are welcome to attend." Clara recognized the significance of this invitation. "We would be honored," she replied. "Should we bring anything?" "Just yourselves," he said, then added with a rare smile, "though if your sons wish to help gather firewood with the other children, it would be appreciated." The gathering began at sunset with the lighting of a great central fire. The entire village assembled in a wide circle, with Chief Whitefeather, Grandmother Willow, and other respected elders seated in positions of honor. Clara and her sons were directed to sit near the chief, a placement that drew curious glances from some villagers. The ceremony began with a blessing spoken in Cherokee by the chief, followed by offerings of tobacco to the fire. Drums began a heartbeat rhythm, and dancers moved into the circle, their movements telling stories Clara couldn't yet interpret, but found mesmerizing nonetheless. "They danced the story of creation," explained Rising Moon, who sat beside Clara. "How the world was formed on the back of the great turtle, and how the animals brought light to darkness." Clara's sons watched wide-eyed, their usual restlessness replaced by fascination. Even John sat perfectly still, absorbing every movement and sound with unusual concentration. As the dancing concluded, Grandmother Willow rose and approached the fire. In her hands she carried a small clay bowl containing a mixture Clara recognized as medicinal herbs. The older woman spoke at length in Cherokee, occasionally gesturing toward Clara and her sons. "She speaks of how the Creator sends healing in unexpected forms," Rising Moon translated quietly. "How wisdom can cross boundaries of people and language when hearts are open to receiving it." Following Grandmother Willow's address, food was shared. Venison, corn, wild greens, and sweet cakes made from berries and honey. The atmosphere gradually shifted from ceremonial to celebratory as stories were told and songs sung around the fire. Clara noticed that Morning Star had been permitted to attend briefly, wrapped in blankets and supported by her father and brother. The young woman's presence brought visible joy to the gathering, confirming for Clara how deeply she was valued by her community. As the evening progressed, an unexpected moment unfolded. Black Wolf approached the fire, standing tall in the flickering light. He spoke in Cherokee for some time, his resonant voice carrying across the gathered assembly. Though Clara couldn't understand his words, she sensed their importance from the attentive silence that fell over the crowd. At the conclusion of his speech, Black Wolf turned directly toward Clara. "My sister lives because of your knowledge and your healing hands," he said in English, clearly wanting her to understand precisely. "For this, I give thanks to the Creator and acknowledge the debt I owe to you, Clara Sullivan." He removed a beautifully crafted knife from his belt, its handle decorated with intricate beadwork and carved symbols. Stepping forward, he presented it to Clara with formal dignity. "This was crafted by my grandfather, who was known for his vision and wisdom," he explained. "I offer it as a symbol of respect for your healing gift and protection for you and your sons while you dwell among us." The significance of this gesture wasn't lost on Clara or anyone present. Black Wolf, the most skeptical of her presence, had publicly acknowledged her contribution and extended protection, a dramatic reversal that carried substantial weight within the community. Clara accepted the knife with appropriate solemnity. "I am honored by your gift and your words, Black Wolf. I used only the knowledge given to me by those who came before, as your people used the wisdom of your ancestors to navigate your path." A murmur of approval rippled through the gathering at her response. Chief Whitefeather nodded slightly, satisfaction evident in his expression. The evening continued with more music and storytelling, but a subtle shift had occurred. Where before Clara and her sons had been tolerated as guests under the chief's protection, now they were acknowledged as having earned a place through their own merit. Later, as she tucked her exhausted sons into bed, Luke asked a question that caught Clara by surprise. "Are the Cherokee people going to be our family now, Mama?" Clara sat on the edge of the sleeping pallet, considering how to answer. "We've found friends here," she said carefully, "people who have shown us kindness when we needed it most. But our future path isn't yet clear." "I like it here," Mark declared, his natural curiosity having found endless fascination in Cherokee customs and crafts. "Eagle Feather is teaching me to make a fishing spear. And I'm learning their songs," John added, yawning widely. Only Matthew remained thoughtful, his young face serious beyond his years. "But we're different," he observed. "Our hair is red and our skin is pale. We don't really belong." Clara smoothed his hair gently. "Belonging isn't always about looking the same or coming from the same place. Sometimes it's about finding people who value what you bring and offering value in return." She smiled at her sons. "You four bring something special wherever you go. Your unique spirits and your bright minds." After the boys had fallen asleep, Clara stepped outside, drawn by the embers of the great fire still glowing in the village center. A figure stood there, Chief Whitefeather, contemplating the dying flames. "Your sons enjoyed the gathering," he observed as she approached. "Very much," Clara agreed. "It was kind of your people to include us." "You have earned your place," he replied simply. "Not many white women would have adapted as you have, or shown such respect for our ways." Clara thought of the many white settlers she had encountered who regarded native peoples with fear or contempt, never attempting to understand their customs or recognize their humanity. "My husband taught me that wisdom wears many faces and speaks in many tongues. To dismiss knowledge because it comes in an unfamiliar form is the height of foolishness." The chief studied her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see beneath surface appearances. "You have lost much," he observed. "A husband, a home, certainty about your path. Yet you carry no bitterness." "I carry grief," Clara corrected gently. "But bitterness serves no purpose except to poison one's own spirit. My husband would want me to continue forward, using the skills we developed together to help others where I can." Chief Whitefeather nodded, satisfaction in his expression, as if she had confirmed something he already suspected. "Tomorrow I must travel to the agency at Fort Gibson," he said, changing the subject. "The government representative wishes to discuss boundaries again. Always they wish to discuss boundaries." The weariness in his voice spoke volumes about these recurring negotiations that inevitably resulted in further restrictions for his people. "Will you be gone long?" Clara asked. 3 days, perhaps 4. Black Wolf will oversee the village in my absence." He hesitated, then added, "When I return, there is a matter I wish to discuss with you. A proposition that may provide a more permanent arrangement for you and your sons." Clara's curiosity was piqued, but the chief's expression suggested he wouldn't elaborate further tonight. "I'll look forward to your return then," she replied, "and to hearing this proposition." As she walked back to her cabin, Clara reflected on how dramatically her circumstances had changed in less than 2 weeks. From mail-order bride abandoned before she could even meet her intended husband to respected healer in a Cherokee village, it was a transformation she could never have anticipated. Yet for all the unexpected acceptance she had found here, questions about the future remained. What proposition did the chief intend to make, and what would it mean for her and her sons if she accepted? The night breeze carried the scent of pine and distant rain. As Clara Sullivan contemplated these questions beneath a sky brilliant with stars, the same stars that had guided her journey west, now witnessing this unexpected detour in her path. Morning would bring new patients seeking her healing touch, new words to learn, new skills to master. But for now, in this quiet moment, she allowed herself to acknowledge how far she had already traveled from the desperate widow who had stepped off the train at Willow Creek Station. Chief Whitefeather's absence stretched from the anticipated 4 days to nearly a week. During this time, Clara fell into a comfortable routine within the village. Each morning she checked on Morning Star, whose recovery continued steadily, then spent time treating various minor ailments brought to her attention by villagers who had begun to trust her medical skills. The women of the village, initially reserved, gradually included Clara in their daily activities. Under Rising Moon's patient guidance, she learned to grind corn with a traditional stone metate, weave simple baskets from river reeds, and prepare foods that her sons had developed a particular fondness for, especially the sweet corn cakes drizzled with wild honey. Her quadruplets thrived in the freedom of village life, their natural energy finding healthy outlets in fishing, gathering, and games with the Cherokee children. Their identical appearance continued to fascinate the villagers, but this curiosity had evolved from wary observation to amused acceptance. The boys' distinct personalities emerged more clearly as they developed different interests. Matthew, gravitating toward hunting skills with the older boys, Mark absorbing language and stories from the elders, Luke assisting Clara with gathering medicinal plants, and John perpetually in motion, racing from one activity to another. On the afternoon of the 6th day, as Clara sorted herbs in the doorway of her cabin, Black Wolf approached. Since the night of the ceremony, his manner toward her had shifted from grudging respect to something approaching cautious friendship. He had begun to teach her sons basic tracking skills, showing particular patience with Matthew's earnest efforts. "My father returns," he announced without preamble. "Riders spotted his party crossing the ridge an hour ago." Clara looked up from her work, noting the tension in Black Wolf's posture. Is something wrong? He hesitated, then seated himself on a nearby stump, an unusual concession that indicated a desire for real conversation. The meetings at the agency never bring good news. Each time they ask for more concessions, more land, more changes to our ways. I'm sorry, Clara said simply, understanding the helplessness he must feel, watching his people's territory and autonomy gradually diminish. My father believes in finding a middle path, adapting enough to survive, but preserving what matters most. Black Wolf's tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of this strategy's wisdom. He says the old ways of fighting cannot succeed against the white man's numbers and weapons, that we must find new approaches. Clara considered his words carefully. Adaptation isn't surrender, she offered. Your people have survived tremendous challenges by choosing when to bend and when to stand firm. Black Wolf studied her, his dark eyes thoughtful. You understand more than most white people care to. Perhaps because I've had to adapt to unexpected changes myself, Clara replied. What worked in Pittsburgh wouldn't serve me here. New circumstances require new thinking. Their conversation was interrupted by excited shouts as children spotted the approaching riders. Black Wolf rose, nodding once to Clara before striding toward the village entrance to meet his father. Chief Whitefeather's return brought a ripple of energy through the community. After conferring with the village elders, he spent time with Morning Star, clearly relieved to find her so improved. It wasn't until evening, after the communal meal, that he approached Clara as she sat mending one of Luke's shirts outside her cabin. "Walk with me," he invited, his expression serious but not troubled. "There are matters we should discuss away from curious ears." Clara set aside her sewing and followed him to a bluff overlooking the stream, where a fallen log provided natural seating. The evening air carried the scent of wild roses and the distant sound of drums from the village. "The agency brings concerning news," the chief began without preamble. "The government plans to survey this land for potential settlement within the year. They speak of opening territories as if these places were empty and waiting rather than home to my people for generations." Clara listened, disturbed but not surprised. She had heard similar stories from her husband, who had treated native patients and witnessed firsthand the relentless pressure on their communities. "We have legal protection for this valley through treaties," Chief Whitefeather continued, "but treaties have been broken before. I must think beyond today to ensure my people have a future." "What can be done?" Clara asked, sensing this conversation was leading somewhere significant. The chief gazed toward the village, where cook fires twinkled in the gathering dusk. "The government representatives respect certain things, written documents, legal ownership, and Christian marriage." He turned to face her directly. "I have been thinking about your situation and that of my daughter." Clara waited, unsure where this was heading. Morning Star is of marriageable age. Among our people she would have many suitors, but her future, like that of all our young people, is uncertain if we cannot protect our land. His steady gaze held Clara's. "You need a permanent place for yourself and your sons. I need someone with your healing knowledge to serve my people, particularly as white settlements draw closer, bringing new diseases." Comprehension dawned slowly. "Are you proposing some sort of arrangement between us?" "I propose a partnership," he clarified. "There is land adjacent to our village, 100 acres that was deeded to me personally by the government as compensation for serving as translator during treaty negotiations. Unlike tribal lands, it cannot easily be taken back because it is held under individual title." Clara listened with growing amazement as he outlined his proposition. He would deed a portion of this land to her for establishing a permanent home and medical practice. In exchange, she would continue to share her healing knowledge with Grandmother Willow, ensuring these skills passed to Morning Star and other young women in the tribe. Her presence as a white landowner with legal documents would provide an additional buffer against encroachment, while her medical services would benefit both the Cherokee community and eventually the settlers who would inevitably arrive. "This is incredibly generous," Clara said when he had finished. "But are you certain your people would accept such an arrangement? Many still view me with caution." "You have earned respect through your actions," Chief Whitefeather replied. "Those who still doubt will come to understand the wisdom of this path." He paused, then added, "Morning Star has great affection for your sons. She has lost her mother. They have lost their father. There is healing in these connections for both." Clara thought of how Morning Star had indeed begun to teach her boys Cherokee words and stories during her recovery, her natural gentleness drawing even shy Luke out of his shell. There was truth in the chief's observation. "I would need to build a proper home," Clara mused, the practical aspects of the proposition taking shape in her mind, "and eventually establish a formal medical practice. These things can be accomplished with help. The men of the village are skilled builders, and there are materials available for trade." He gestured toward the valley below. "The land has good water, fertile soil for a garden, and space for your sons to grow strong." The offer represented everything Clara had hoped to find when she agreed to marry Dr. Blackwood. Security, purpose, a fresh start. Yet it came from an entirely unexpected source and would mean a life very different from what she had imagined. "I need time to consider," she said finally. "This decision affects not just me, but my children's future." Chief Whitefeather nodded, unsurprised by her caution. "Wisdom is not found in haste. Consider until the next full moon. Whatever you decide, you and your sons are welcome here." As they walked back toward the village, Clara found herself viewing the familiar surroundings with new eyes, not as a temporary refuge, but as a potential permanent home. The thought was both exhilarating and intimidating. The following morning, Clara took her sons fishing to have time alone with them. As they sat alongside the stream, lines cast into the clear water, she carefully broached the chief's proposition. "How would you boys feel about staying here?" she asked, watching their reactions closely. "Not just for a little while, but making our home near the Cherokee village." "Forever?" Mark asked, his quick mind immediately grasping the significance. "Perhaps. Chief Whitefeather has offered us land where we could build a house. I could establish a proper medical practice to help both the Cherokee people and settlers in the region." 4 identical faces registered varying responses. Matthew's thoughtful consideration, Mark's immediate excitement, Luke's quiet contentment, and John's momentary confusion, followed by enthusiastic acceptance. "Would we still learn Cherokee ways?" Matthew asked, "even though we'd have our own house?" "Yes," Clara assured him. "That's part of the arrangement. We would continue to learn from them, and I would share my medical knowledge with their healers." "Would we go to school?" Mark inquired, always concerned with learning. Clara had considered this aspect. "Eventually, as settlements grow, schools will come. But there's much to learn outside of schoolrooms, too. The Cherokee children are taught tracking, fishing, plant identification, and the stories of their people." "Eagle Feather says I have good eyes for tracking," Matthew said with pride. "He thinks I could be a hunter someday. And Grandmother Willow is teaching me about plants that heal," Luke added softly. John, typically the most energetic and least reflective, surprised Clara with his observation. "The sad went away here, Mama." "What's sad, sweetheart?" she asked. Sad in your eyes. It was there in the big city and on the train. It's not there now." Clara felt a lump form in her throat at his simple perception. From the mouths of children came the most profound truths, the grief that had shadowed her since. Her husband's death had indeed begun to lift in this unexpected place, replaced by purpose and the beginnings of joy. "You're right, John," she acknowledged. "I am happier here." "Then we should stay," Matthew declared with the decisive leadership that was already becoming his hallmark. His brothers nodded in agreement, the matter settled in their uncomplicated view of the world. If only adult decisions could be so straightforward, Clara thought. While her sons had embraced village life with the adaptability of childhood, she needed to consider longer-term implications. What would it mean to raise her children between two worlds, neither fully Cherokee nor fully part of white society? How would she establish herself professionally in such a remote location? And what challenges might arise from being a white woman permanently associated with a native community? Yet, as she watched her sons, healthy, engaged, and thriving in ways they never had in Pittsburgh, Clara felt the weight of these questions balanced by the tangible benefits of Chief Whitefeather's offer. Security, purpose, community, and the chance to practice medicine where it was truly needed. Perhaps most importantly, her boys would grow up understanding that humanity transcended differences of language, custom, and appearance. A lesson far more valuable than many taught in traditional schools. A splash and triumphant shout interrupted her thoughts as John pulled a wriggling trout from the stream. The other boys crowded around, admiring his catch with excited exclamations in a mix of English and newly acquired Cherokee words. Clara smiled, watching their easy camaraderie. The decision wasn't made. She would need more time to consider all aspects of the proposition. But seeing her sons flourish in this environment made the path ahead seem increasingly clear. 3 days after Chief Whitefeather's proposal, Clara found herself standing on the ridge overlooking the parcel of land he had offered. The property stretched from the edge of a pine forest down into a gentle valley, with a clear stream cutting through its center. Wildflowers dotted the open meadows, and a natural clearing near the water provided an ideal building site. Black Wolf had guided her to this vantage point, pointing out the boundaries marked by distinctive rock formations and ancient trees. "My father selected this portion carefully," he explained. "A good water, protected from winter winds by the ridge, and close enough to our village for safety, but separate enough for your independence." Clara surveyed the landscape, mentally placing a cabin, garden, and perhaps eventually a separate structure for treating patients. The practical aspects of establishing a homestead here seemed daunting, yet exhilarating. "It's beautiful," she acknowledged, "but building a proper home would require resources I don't possess." Black Wolf gestured toward the forest. "Pine for lumber, stone for foundation. The men of our village would help raise the walls as they do for any new family. As for other needs—" He hesitated, then continued with careful diplomacy. "My father suggests retrieving your belongings from Willow Creek. The station master holds your trunks, yes? They might contain items of value or necessity." The mention of her abandoned luggage brought a rush of complicated emotions. In the weeks since her rejection at the station, Clara had pushed thoughts of those possessions aside, focusing instead on immediate survival. The trunks contained practical items, clothing, books, household linens, but also bittersweet reminders of her previous life, her husband's medical instruments, family photographs, and the wedding ring she'd removed during her journey west. "You're right," she said finally. "Those things shouldn't be abandoned, regardless of my decision about settling here. I will accompany you to Willow Creek tomorrow, if you wish," Black Wolf offered. "The journey is safer with two." His offer surprised Clara. Though his attitude had warmed considerably, she hadn't expected him to volunteer for such a task. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to take you from your responsibilities here." A hint of amusement crossed his typically stoic features. "My father suggested it. He believes your reception in town might be different with a Cherokee warrior at your side." Clara couldn't help but smile at this strategic thinking. He's probably right about that. As they made their way back toward the village, Black Wolf maintained a thoughtful silence for some time before speaking again. "My sister says you lost your husband to illness." "Yes," Clara confirmed, surprised by the personal nature of the question. "Typhoid fever. I nursed him through it, but his heart failed in the final stages. Yet you continued his healing work." "It became my work too over the years. We practiced together." She glanced at her companion. "My grandmother was a healer before him." "Perhaps it was always my path." Black Wolf nodded slowly. "The path finds us, even when we think we choose it." After another pause, he added, "My wife and son were taken by smallpox 5 winters ago." The unexpected revelation stopped Clara in her tracks. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry." His expression remained composed, but grief shadowed his dark eyes. "Many died in that time. My son had seen only 2 summers. My wife, Singing Brook, was known for her beautiful voice." He looked away toward the distant mountains. "After, I became harder, more focused on protecting what remained of our people, less willing to see good in the white world that brought such sickness." Clara understood then the deeper source of his initial hostility toward her, not just political wariness, but personal pain associated with disease brought by white settlers. "And now?" she asked gently. "Now I see that wisdom and healing can come from unexpected sources." His gaze returned to her. "My father believes your coming here was meant, that the Creator sent you not just for Morning Star, but for our people's future. I have come to think he may be right." This vote of confidence from the once skeptical war leader carried significant weight. Clara felt both honored and humbled by his shift in perspective. "I make no claim to destiny," she said carefully. "I came west seeking security for my sons and found myself abandoned. Your father offered help when I had nowhere to turn. If my skills can benefit your community in return, that seems like simple balance, not divine intervention." Black Wolf's rare smile appeared briefly. Perhaps the Creator works through simple balance more often than through miracles. The philosophical observation reminded Clara how often she underestimated the depth of thought behind the Cherokee peoples. Spiritual perspectives, Western assumptions about primitive beliefs failed utterly to capture the nuanced understanding they possessed. The journey to Willow Creek the following day proved uneventful but illuminating. Clara rode a gentle mare, borrowed from the village, while Black Wolf led the way on his paint stallion. Though they encountered several settlers on the road, none offered more than cautious nods, clearly uncertain what to make of a white woman traveling comfortably alongside a Cherokee warrior. Willow Creek itself appeared exactly as Clara remembered, though it felt smaller somehow after her time in the more vibrant Cherokee community. The station master's eyebrows shot up in surprise when she entered his office, Black Wolf's imposing presence filling the doorway behind her. "Mrs. Sullivan, didn't expect to see you again," he stammered, eyes darting nervously between her and her companion. "Thought you might have caught the eastbound train." "I found a place to settle," Clara replied pleasantly. "I've come for my trunks." "Which I believe you've been holding." Yes, of course, in the storage room." He hesitated. "There's been some talk in town about you going off with the Cherokee. Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house was quite concerned." "How kind of her to worry," Clara said, her tone neutral. "As you can see, I'm perfectly well. Better than well. In fact," the station master cleared his throat uncomfortably, "Dr. Blackwood left town last week, sold his practice to a younger doctor from St. Louis, seemed in quite a hurry to leave." This information piqued Clara's curiosity. Did he say why? Not directly, but there was talk about financial troubles. Apparently, he'd borrowed heavily from Mr. Harrington at the bank, using his medical practice as collateral. When he couldn't make the payments, the station master trailed off, But Clara understood the implication. Dr. Blackwood's rejection of her and her sons likely had less to do with being unwilling to support a ready-made family and more to do with his inability to maintain his own financial security. He had misrepresented his circumstances as thoroughly as he now accused her of misrepresenting hers. "I see," she said simply. "How fortunate that our arrangement didn't proceed." With the station master's help, Clara identified her 3 trunks in the crowded storage room. Black Wolf efficiently loaded them onto a pack mule he had brought for this purpose, his strength making light work of what would have been a challenging task for Clara alone. As they prepared to depart, the station master handed Clara an envelope. "This came for you about a week after you left. Been holding it, not knowing where to forward it." The letter bore a Pittsburgh postmark and the handwriting of her late husband's attorney. Clara tucked it away to read later, thanking the station master for his trouble. Their return journey took them past Dr. Blackwood's former residence and medical office, a handsome 2-story house set back from the main street. A new sign hung beside the door: Dr. William Caldwell, physician and surgeon. Through the window, Clara glimpsed a young man arranging medical supplies on shelves. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine the life that might have been hers in that house, helping in the medical practice, establishing herself in the community, raising her sons in conventional society. It would have offered certain comforts and opportunities that life near a Cherokee village would not. Yet, as she turned her horse away, following Black Wolf toward the trail home, Clara felt no regret. Dr. Blackwood's rejection, painful as it had been in the moment, had opened a door to something more authentic than the arrangement she had initially sought. That evening, after settling her sons for the night, Clara finally opened the letter from Pittsburgh. The attorney's formal language conveyed surprising news. A small insurance policy her husband had maintained through his medical association had finally been processed. The sum wasn't substantial, $500, but represented a windfall she hadn't expected. "With this," she murmured, to herself, "I could build a proper cabin and still have funds for medical supplies." The timing seemed almost providential, arriving just as she contemplated Chief Whitefeather's offer of land. Clara wasn't prone to seeing divine signs in coincidences, but even her practical mind couldn't help but note how this development smoothed the path toward accepting the proposition. The following morning, she sought out Chief Whitefeather, finding him at the village council area where he often handled community matters. "I've made my decision," she told him, her resolve firm after a night of careful consideration. "I accept your generous offer with gratitude." A smile of genuine pleasure transformed his dignified features. "You have chosen wisely, Clara Sullivan. This path will bring challenges, but also great purpose. There are practical matters to discuss," she continued. "I've received unexpected funds that will allow me to build a proper cabin and establish a small medical practice. And I'd like to formally train Morning Star and any other young women with healing aptitude." "All this can be arranged," the chief assured her. "The building can begin within the week if that suits you. The summer months are best for such work." Clara nodded, her mind already racing with plans. "My sons and I will continue to learn Cherokee, their ways and language. I want them to understand and respect both worlds they will inhabit." A wise approach. Morning Star has already offered to continue their lessons. He studied her thoughtfully. "You understand that this decision may create difficulties with some white settlers when they eventually come. Not all will understand your choice to live near our people." "I've never made decisions based on others' expectations," Clara replied, thinking of the gossip and judgment she had endured as a widow with Quadruplets in Pittsburgh. "My concern is providing stability for my sons and using my skills where they're truly needed." Chief Whitefeather nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Then it is settled. Tonight, we will announce your decision to the village and begin preparations for building your new home." As Clara walked back to her temporary cabin, a profound sense of rightness settled over her. The mail-order marriage she had pinned her hopes on had dissolved before it began, yet that very rejection had led her to something more meaningful, not just security, but purpose, not just shelter, but community. Her 4 sons were playing with Cherokee children near the stream, their copper heads bright against the darker hair of their companions. They moved easily between English and Cherokee words, their young minds absorbing both cultures with natural fluidity. In them, Clara saw the possibility of a new kind of future, one that honored difference while recognizing common humanity. "Mama!" John called, spotting her. "Eagle Feather taught us to make whistles." "From River Reeds," Clara smiled, watching as her most energetic son demonstrated this new skill, producing a shrill sound that sent nearby birds fluttering from trees. The other boys crowded around, eager to show their own creations. "That's wonderful," she told them. "And I have news too. We're going to be building our own home nearby. We're staying." The simple announcement brought whoops of joy from all 4 boys, their enthusiasm drawing curious looks from their Cherokee playmates. As Clara explained, in her limited but improving Cherokee, smiles spread among the children. Soon they were all chattering excitedly, the Cherokee children offering suggestions about the best places to gather building materials and what features the new house should include. Watching them plan together, differences forgotten in shared excitement, Clara felt confirmation that her decision was right, not just for herself, but for her sons and perhaps in some small way for the future of both communities. The journey west had not ended as she anticipated, but it had led precisely where she needed to be. The construction of Clara's cabin began with a ceremony. At dawn, Grandmother Willow blessed the building site with prayers and burning herbs, while the village's most experienced builders marked the foundation lines with stakes and twine. Chief Whitefeather spoke words of welcome, formally acknowledging that this land, while physically separate from the village, would be connected to the Cherokee community through bonds of friendship and mutual support. Clara was struck by how different this process was from building in white settlements, where construction typically began with contracts and payments rather than prayers and community commitment. Here, the raising of a home was considered a communal endeavor, with everyone contributing according to their abilities. The men felled selected pines from the surrounding forest, carefully choosing mature trees while leaving younger ones to grow. Women prepared meals to sustain the workers, and even the children participated by gathering stones for the foundation and fireplace. Clara's sons threw themselves into the effort with enthusiasm, proud to help create their new home. The cabin's design incorporated both Cherokee building wisdom and elements Clara had requested based on her medical needs. The main room would be larger than traditional Cherokee dwellings to serve as both living space and treatment area. A stone fireplace would provide heat and cooking facilities, while 2 smaller rooms would offer sleeping quarters, one for Clara and one for her sons. Large windows would ensure ample light for examining patients, and a covered porch would provide outdoor space protected from sun and rain. As the walls began to rise, Clara divided her time between assisting with construction and continuing her medical work in the village. Word of her healing abilities had spread, and occasional patients now traveled from outlying farms and homesteads seeking her care. She treated them all equally: Cherokee, white settlers, and the occasional traveler passing through the territory. Morning. Star, now fully recovered, had begun formal training under Clara's guidance. The young woman showed natural aptitude for medicine, combining her knowledge of traditional Cherokee remedies with an eager mind for learning the scientific approaches Clara taught. Together, they created a unique medical practice that drew from the wisdom of both cultures. On the 10th day of construction, as the cabin's roof beams were being set into place, a commotion at the village perimeter drew attention. Two riders approached, a man and woman on exhausted horses, the woman clutching a bundled infant and clearly in distress. Clara and Morning Star hurried to meet them as Black Wolf intercepted the strangers, questioning their purpose. "Please," the man called out, his voice strained with worry. "We were told there's a healer here, a white woman doctor. Our baby has fever and strange breathing since yesterday. We've ridden 20 miles seeking help." Black Wolf looked to Clara, who nodded and stepped forward. "I'm Mrs. Sullivan. Bring your child into the shade where I can examine him properly." The couple dismounted, the mother cradling her infant with the desperate care of a parent fearing the worst. They introduced themselves as Thomas and Sarah Miller, homesteaders who had settled near the territorial border the previous autumn. Under the spreading branches of an oak tree, Clara gently unwrapped the feverish infant, a boy of perhaps 6 months. His breathing came in labored wheezes, and his tiny chest contracted visibly with each effort. Placing her ear against his back, Clara listened to the concerning crackles and whistles within his lungs. "How long has the breathing been difficult?" she asked, checking his pulse and temperature with practiced hands. "Started with just a cough 2 days ago," Sarah explained, her face drawn with exhaustion and fear. "By yesterday afternoon, he was struggling to breathe and burning with fever. We tried onion poultices like my mother taught, but nothing helped." Morning Star brought Clara's medical bag, and together they prepared a steam treatment using pine resin and herbal extracts. Clara showed the anxious mother how to hold the baby over the steaming basin, tenting a blanket to capture the medicinal vapors. "He has inflammation in his lungs," Clara explained as they worked. "The steam will help loosen the congestion. I'll prepare medicine to reduce the fever and help him breathe more easily." The Millers watched with cautious hope as Clara and Morning Star worked together, the Cherokee woman grinding herbs while Clara prepared tinctures from her supplies. To their credit, they showed no hesitation or prejudice about Morning Star's involvement, their concern for their child overriding any cultural preconceptions. "The trading post owner told us to seek you," Thomas explained as they waited for the medicines to take effect. "Said you were trained back east, but living near the Cherokee now. Some folks thought he was telling tales, but we were desperate enough to try. I trained with my husband, who was a physician in Pittsburgh," Clara confirmed, monitoring the baby's breathing as it gradually eased under the treatment. "When he passed, I continued his work. The Cherokee have been kind enough to welcome my skills and my sons." "Sons?" Sarah asked, momentarily distracted from her worry. "Quadruplets," Clara replied with a small smile. 4 identical boys, 5 years old now." The revelation brought looks of astonishment. "4 at once," Thomas marveled. "The Lord gives special burdens to those with special strength, I suppose." By evening, the infant's fever had reduced significantly, and his breathing, while still congested, had lost the frightening labor of earlier hours. Clara prepared additional medicines for the Millers to take home, carefully explaining the proper dosages and application methods. "He's too ill to travel back tonight," she told the worried parents. "You're welcome to stay until morning when he's stronger." The Millers accepted gratefully, too exhausted from worry and travel to attempt the return journey immediately. The village provided them with food and a place to rest near Clara's partially constructed cabin. Though initially cautious in the Cherokee settlement, the couple gradually relaxed as they were treated with courtesy, and their child continued to improve under Clara's care. That night, after checking on the infant one final time, Clara walked with Morning Star back toward the village under a canopy of brilliant stars. "The white settlers will come more often now," Morning Star observed. "Word will spread of your healing." Clara nodded, understanding the complex implications. "Is that concerning to you?" Morning Star considered the question thoughtfully. "Change comes whether we wish it or not. Better it comes through healing than through fear or fighting." She glanced at Clara. "My father says we must find ways to live alongside the white people without becoming them. Your presence helps build that bridge." The insight reminded Clara again of the Cherokee people's pragmatic wisdom. Rather than simple resistance or resignation to changing circumstances, they sought a third path: adaptation without surrender. "Of core identity, I hope I can honor that trust," Clara replied. "My goal is to heal, not to change your people's ways." Morning Star smiled. "Yet change happens through connection. Already my brother speaks more English. Your sons learn Cherokee games, and I understand your medicines. We change each other without intending to." It was a profound observation that stayed with Clara as she settled her sons for sleep in their temporary shelter. The boys had spent the day proudly showing the Miller couple's older children around the village, unconsciously serving as bridges between cultures just by being themselves. The following morning, the Millers prepared to depart with their much-improved infant. As Thomas helped his wife mount her horse, he approached Clara with evident gratitude. "We can't pay you properly now," he began, embarrassment coloring his features. "The winter was hard, and we haven't sold our first crops yet. But come harvest—" Clara raised a hand to stop him. "There's no need. Perhaps someday you can help another family in need." "That's not how doctors usually work," Thomas said, surprised. "I'm not a usual doctor," Clara replied with a smile. "And this isn't a usual place." Sarah adjusted her healthy, sleeping infant in her arms. "We won't forget this kindness, Mrs. Sullivan." She glanced around at the partially built cabin and the Cherokee helpers continuing their work. "People in town say all sorts of things about the Indians, but I've seen nothing but decency here." "Perhaps you could mention that when those sorts of things are said in your hearing," Clara suggested gently. Thomas nodded slowly, a new understanding in his expression. "Reckon we owe you and these folks that much at least." As the Millers rode away, Clara felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. Beyond saving the infant's life, always reward enough for a healer, she had potentially helped shift perceptions in a small but meaningful way. The Millers would return to their community with a story that contradicted prevailing prejudices about the Cherokee. By week's end, Clara's cabin stood complete, save for interior finishing touches. The structure was solid and surprisingly beautiful, with smooth, chinked log walls, a stone chimney, and carefully crafted windows that allowed maximum light. The porch overlooked the stream, providing a peaceful spot for recuperating patients to rest. On the day the roof was finished, the entire village gathered for a celebration. Food was shared, music played, and stories told long into the evening. Clara's sons, overtired but happy, fell asleep amid the festivities, tucked under blankets near the fire. As the gathering quieted, Chief Whitefeather approached Clara with a small wooden box carved with intricate symbols. "A gift to mark your new beginning," he said, presenting it with formal dignity. Inside, Clara found a collection of seeds, medicinal plants carefully selected from Grandmother Willow's private stores. The gift represented trust, acknowledgement of her skill, and investment in the future healing practice she would establish. "These are precious," Clara said, recognizing the value beyond any monetary measure. "I'm deeply honored." "Plant them with good intentions," Grandmother Willow advised, joining them. "Speak to them as you would to children. They respond to the heart of the gardener." The old woman's gnarled hand covered Clara's briefly. "You came seeking one path and found another. This is how the Creator often works. showing us what we need rather than what we think we want. Clara couldn't argue with this assessment. Her journey west had begun with dreams of security through marriage to a stranger. Instead, she had found purpose, community, and the opportunity to create something uniquely valuable, a healing practice that bridged two worlds. As she gazed at her completed cabin silhouetted against the night sky, Clara felt a profound sense of arrival, not at a destination she had planned, but at one that fit her and her sons more perfectly than she could have imagined. Tomorrow, they would move their belongings into the new home. There were still furnishings to build, a garden to plant, and countless adjustments ahead. The path would not be easy. Living between cultures never was. Yet as she watched her quadruplets sleeping peacefully amid their new community, Clara Sullivan knew with certainty that rejection at Willow Creek Station had been not an ending but a beginning, the first step on a journey to where they truly belonged. Autumn painted the valley in vibrant hues of gold, crimson, and amber. As Clara stood on her cabin porch, surveying the changes 5 months had brought, the medicinal garden stretched in orderly rows beside the cabin, still yielding herbs and roots despite the approaching frost. A small barn housed the mare she had purchased, and a milk cow that provided amply for her growing boys. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, carrying the scent of baking bread and simmering soup, comforts of home established through perseverance and community support. Inside, her 4 sons practiced their letters at the sturdy oak table built by Black Wolf and other village men, though they still looked identical to outsiders with their copper hair and serious blue eyes. Clara marveled at how their individual personalities had deepened and flourished in this environment of freedom and dual cultural learning. Matthew had developed a close apprenticeship with Black Wolf, learning tracking and hunting skills with remarkable aptitude. Mark spent hours with the tribal storyteller, absorbing both Cherokee legends and practicing reading from the books Clara had brought from Pittsburgh. Luke, the quietest of the 4, showed natural talent for healing, often accompanying Clara and Morning Star as they gathered plants and prepared remedies. And energetic John had become a favorite of Chief Whitefeather, who seemed to enjoy the boys' endless questions and boundless enthusiasm. The medical practice Clara had established now served a growing circle of patients, Cherokee villagers, white settlers from surrounding homesteads, and occasional travelers passing through the territory. Her unique combination of formal medical training and willingness to incorporate traditional Cherokee healing practices had created something new and valuable that transcended cultural boundaries. Morning Star had blossomed as her apprentice, her natural empathy enhanced by meticulous study of Clara's medical books and careful observation of treatment techniques. The young woman now handled many routine cases independently, freeing Clara to focus on more complex medical challenges and the education of her sons. "Mama, Ryder's coming!" John called from his lookout position by the window, always the first to spot approaching visitors. Clara moved to the doorway, shading her eyes against the low autumn sun. 3 figures on horseback approached along the trail from Willow Creek. 2 men in formal attire flanking a woman in a traveling dress. Not local settlers seeking medical attention then. Something official. "Boys, continue with your lessons," she instructed, stepping onto the porch to meet the visitors. As they drew closer, Clara recognized the woman with a jolt of surprise, Sarah Miller, whose infant she had treated months earlier. The men were strangers. One middle-aged with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, the other younger with the unmistakable look of an educated Easterner. "Mrs. Sullivan," Sarah greeted her warmly as they dismounted. "I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all," Clara assured her, though curiosity about her companions burned. "How is your son?" "Thriving, thanks to you." Sarah's smile was genuine. "I've brought visitors who wish to meet you. This is Judge Harmon, who oversees territorial affairs in this district, and Dr. Edwin Taylor from Baltimore, who's assessing medical needs in the territory." Clara welcomed them politely, noting the assessing gaze of both men as they took in her established homestead and the nearby Cherokee village visible through the trees. "Mrs. Miller has spoken quite highly of your medical abilities," Judge Harmon said after introductions were complete. "When Dr. Taylor mentioned his mission to evaluate healthcare provisions in the territory, I thought he should meet you." Clara invited them inside, where her son's presence caused the usual momentary startlement from newcomers unaccustomed to seeing identical quadruplets. With quiet dignity, she offered refreshments while answering Dr. Taylor's increasingly focused questions about her training, experience, and current practice. "And you treat both settlers and Cherokee patients?" the doctor asked, genuine interest in his tone rather than judgment. "Illness doesn't recognize cultural boundaries," Clara replied. "Neither should healing." Dr. Taylor nodded thoughtfully. "Fascinating approach. I've been documenting the dire shortage of qualified medical practitioners throughout the territory. Most settlements have no access to proper care, and the Indian agencies provide minimal services at best." Judge Harmon cleared his throat. "Which brings us to the purpose of our visit, Mrs. Sullivan. The territorial government is establishing a network of medical stations to serve both settler communities and native populations. Dr. Taylor has been commissioned to identify suitable locations and potential practitioners. Understanding dawned. And you're considering this area for such a station?" "We are," Dr. Taylor confirmed. "Your location is strategically positioned between several growing settlements and the Cherokee community. More importantly, you've already established a practice that serves both populations effectively. The territorial government would provide supplies, medicines, and a modest stipend," Judge Harmon explained. "In exchange, you would maintain records of treatments and report monthly on health conditions in the region." "And my independence?" Clara asked cautiously. "Would I still determine how to practice medicine according to my judgment?" "Within reasonable guidelines," Dr. Taylor assured her. "We're not looking to impose rigid Eastern medical orthodoxy, especially when local approaches may be effective. We merely want to ensure basic standards and documentation." Clara considered the proposition, seeing both opportunity and potential complications. "I work closely with Cherokee healers, particularly Morning Star, Chief Whitefeather's daughter. She's becoming a skilled practitioner in her own right. Would this arrangement acknowledge her role?" The men exchanged glances, clearly not having anticipated this question. After a moment's hesitation, Dr. Taylor nodded. "I see no reason why. Not provided her work meets basic standards. In fact, having a practitioner knowledgeable in native healing traditions would be valuable for the overall mission." As they discussed details, Clara's sons finished their lessons and slipped outside to play, their excited voices soon mingling with those of Cherokee children who had come to join them. The natural integration of the two communities, visible through the cabin window, served as silent testimony to the bridges Clara had helped build. "I'd need to discuss this with Chief Whitefeather before giving my answer," Clara said finally. "Any arrangement affecting healthcare for his people should have his input." Judge Harmon seemed about to object to this condition, but was interrupted by the arrival of Black Wolf, who appeared in the doorway with the quiet authority that characterized his movements. "My father requests your presence, Clara Sullivan," he announced formally, then acknowledged the visitors with a measured nod. "Yours as well, if you discuss matters affecting our people." The judge's surprise at being summoned by a Cherokee chief was evident, but Dr. Taylor rose immediately. "We would be honored to meet with Chief Whitefeather." As they walked the short path to the village, Clara noticed Sarah Miller's ease among the Cherokee children who ran past, greeting them by name, a dramatic evolution from her initial wariness months earlier. "Your son must be much bigger now," Clara observed. Sarah smiled proudly. "Growing stronger every day. We named him Sullivan, after you. My husband said no doctor in Pittsburgh would have ridden 20 miles to help strangers without guarantee of payment, especially not alongside an Indian healer. The simple acknowledgement warmed Clara's heart. Small changes in perspective, multiplied across many encounters, created the foundation for larger understanding. Chief Whitefeather received them in the council area where Morning Star and Grandmother Willow joined them, along with other tribal elders. The formal discussion that followed demonstrated the chief's shrewd understanding of territorial politics and his vision for protecting his people's interests through strategic cooperation. By sunset, the framework of an agreement had been established. The medical station would be officially recognized, with Clara as its director and Morning Star as her acknowledged assistant. Both Cherokee healing practices and Western medicine would be respected, with emphasis on determining the most effective treatments regardless of origin. Most importantly, the arrangement would be documented as a formal partnership between the territorial government and the Cherokee community, providing an additional layer of official recognition for the village's standing. As Judge Harmon, Dr. Taylor and Sarah Miller prepared to depart, Clara felt a profound sense of witnessing something significant, not just for herself, but for both communities. What had begun with rejection at a frontier station had evolved into a position where she could help shape healthcare for an entire region while bridging cultural divides. "We'll send the official documentation within the month," Judge Harmon promised. "Dr. Taylor will return with the initial supply shipment before winter sets in." After the visitors had gone, Clara walked with Chief Whitefeather back toward her cabin in the gathering twilight. Her sons had stayed in the village for the evening meal, absorbed into the community as naturally as if they had been born to it. "You have created something valuable here," the chief observed, gesturing toward the cabin that symbolized her position between two worlds. "Not just healing for bodies, but perhaps for the greater wounds between our peoples." "It wasn't what I intended when I came west," Clara admitted. "I sought only security through marriage." "The Creator often has larger plans than our small intentions," he replied with quiet wisdom. "You were rejected by one who saw only burden in your children. You found welcome with those who recognized the blessing they represent." The observation struck Clara profoundly. Dr. Blackwood had seen 4 hungry mouths to feed. The Cherokee had seen 4 bright spirits bringing unique gifts. The contrast couldn't be starker. As they reached her cabin, Morning Star joined them, excitement visible in her usually composed features. "The territorial doctor has agreed to send medical books for our use," she said, "and instruments we've needed. This partnership will help many people." Her enthusiasm confirmed for Clara that the agreement served not just her interests, but those of the community that had become her home. What began as personal rejection had transformed into collective opportunity. That night, after her sons were asleep, Clara sat on her porch beneath a canopy of brilliant stars. The valley spread before her, her medicinal garden, the stream where her boys fished alongside Cherokee children, the village glowing with cook fires in the distance. Beyond lay rolling hills where settlers like the Millers were establishing. Homesteads bringing inevitable change, but also potential for new understanding. 5 months earlier, she had stood alone on a frontier station platform, clutching 4 small hands while facing rejection and uncertainty. Now she sat before a home, built by many hands, with purpose clarified and belonging established. The mail-order marriage that had failed to materialize had made space for something far more meaningful. Not just personal security, but a role in healing the divisions between peoples. Clara Sullivan, once desperate widow seeking any safe harbor, had become something she could never have anticipated. A bridge builder, a healer of both bodies and misunderstandings, a woman whose rejected arrival had transformed into essential presence. Inside her cabin, 4 identical boys slept peacefully, no longer curiosities to be whispered about, but valued individuals growing into their unique strengths. Outside, the Cherokee village and scattered settler homesteads coexisted in fragile but promising equilibrium. Between them stood Clara, with her healing hands, touched by 2 worlds and belonging uniquely to both. The path had not been what she planned when boarding that train in Pittsburgh, but it had led precisely where she and her quadruplets were meant to be. In the quiet night, with gratitude filling her heart, Clara whispered a truth she had come to understand through experience. Sometimes rejection merely clears the path to one's true destination. Her healing touch, recognized first by a Cherokee chief when others turned away, had found its purpose not despite hardship, but because of it, transforming abandonment into belonging, isolation into community, and uncertainty into meaningful legacy for generations to come. Winter arrived with a silent snowfall that blanketed the valley in pristine white. The medical station received its promised supplies just before the heavy snows made travel difficult, providing Clara and Morning Star with new instruments, medicinal compounds, and the reference books they had requested. Dr. Taylor had been surprisingly generous, including several advanced texts on pediatric medicine and women's health that reflected his recognition of their particular needs. Clara established a regular schedule, treating patients in her cabin 3 days a week and traveling to outlying homesteads when weather permitted. Morning Star handled most cases in the Cherokee village, consulting with Clara on more complex conditions. Together, they kept meticulous records as required by their territorial appointment, creating what Dr. Taylor later described as the most comprehensive medical documentation in the territory. The harshness of winter brought communities closer. From necessity, when influenza swept through nearby settlements, Clara and Morning Star worked tirelessly, moving between Cherokee homes and settler cabins with remedies from both traditions. Their combined approach, vapor treatments and willow bark from Cherokee medicine, alongside Clara's more conventional therapies, proved remarkably effective, resulting in fewer deaths than in neighboring areas. "You were right about the combined treatments," Clara acknowledged to Grandmother Willow one evening as they prepared remedies together. "The traditional steam with pine resin opens the breathing passages more effectively than anything in my medical books." The old woman nodded, her gnarled hands expertly grinding herbs. "And your fever medicines work faster than our bark teas. Together, they do what neither could alone." She gave Clara a knowing look. "Like our peoples, perhaps." When heavy snows isolated individual homesteads, Black Wolf organized Cherokee riders to check on distant families carrying medicine and news. Several settler families, including the Millers, spent storm days in the Cherokee village when travel became impossible, sharing meals and stories around communal fires. These forced proximities created understanding no amount of theoretical goodwill could have established. Spring arrived with renewal beyond just the natural world. Judge Harmon returned with official territorial recognition of the medical station's success, along with increased funding and supplies. More significantly, he brought news that would permanently alter the region's development. "The railroad is coming," he announced during a meeting that included Clara, Chief Whitefeather, and representatives from nearby settlements. "Construction begins this summer, with a station planned near the junction of Turner's Creek and the main road. The proposed location would place the railroad station approximately 5 miles from both the Cherokee village and Clara's cabin, close enough for convenience, but distant enough to prevent immediate encroachment. There will be changes," the judge continued. "More settlers, increased trade, eventually a proper town. The territorial governor is committed to ensuring these developments respect established communities, including the Cherokee settlement." Chief Whitefeather listened with the careful neutrality that masked his strategic thinking, and the land rights we have secured through treaties will be honored and formally recorded with the new county administration, Judge Harmon assured him. Your cooperation with the medical station has demonstrated the benefits of partnership rather than conflict. The governor considers this region a model for territorial development. Later, as Clara walked with Chief Whitefeather along the stream that bordered their properties, they discussed the implications of the coming changes. The railroad brings both opportunity and threat, he observed. Trade for our crafts, access to supplies we need, but also more pressure on our boundaries and ways. Your leadership has secured important protections, Clara reminded him. The formal recognition of your land rights, the partnership through the medical station, these create official relationships that newcomers will have to acknowledge. He nodded thoughtfully. And your position between our worlds becomes even more valuable. The settlers listen to you in ways they would never listen to me. It was true. Over the months, Clara had become not just a healer, but an interpreter of cultures, explaining Cherokee perspectives to settlers and helping the Cherokee understand the newcomers' ways. Her unique position, respected in both communities without fully belonging to either, allowed her to bridge divides that might otherwise have widened with increasing contact. By summer's end, when Clara's boys celebrated their 6th birthday with a gathering that included both Cherokee children and settler families, the foundation for the region's unusual development was firmly established. The small celebration reflected larger changes. Cherokee children teaching settler children their games, settler mothers bringing dishes to share alongside traditional Cherokee foods, and conversations that flowed across cultural boundaries. With increasing ease, as Clara watched her sons blow out candles on the cake Sarah Miller had insisted on baking for the occasion, she caught Chief Whitefeather's gaze across the gathering. His slight nod conveyed understanding of what they were witnessing, not perfect harmony or the erasure of differences, but the beginning of something rarely seen in the territories. Communities choosing cooperation over conflict, curiosity over fear. That night, after guests had departed and her tired boys slept soundly, Clara found Black Wolf waiting on her porch, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. The railroad brings many changes, he said without preamble, some good, some difficult, but change comes regardless of our wishes. Yes, Clara agreed, wondering at his purpose. He stood silent for a moment before continuing. When Singing Brook died, I believed I would walk alone for all my remaining days. This was proper, I thought, as I needed to focus on protecting our people. The personal direction of his words surprised Clara, who had grown accustomed to his typical focus on community matters rather than individual concerns. The past year has shown me that protection takes many forms, he continued, sometimes through strength, sometimes through building new understandings. Your presence has helped create protection of a kind I could not have achieved alone. Clara felt a flutter of awareness at the direction of his words. Over the months, her relationship with Black Wolf had evolved from wary acquaintance to respected colleague to something less easily defined, a friendship deepened by shared purpose and mutual respect. My sons have benefited greatly from your teachings, she said carefully. Your patience with them has been a gift. They are good boys with strong spirits. His gaze met hers directly. I have watched you build this life between two worlds, Clara Sullivan. You have shown courage and wisdom few possess. I find myself wondering if there might be a place in your life for more than the work we share. The honest declaration hung in the night air between them, neither a demand nor a plea, but a question offered with dignity. Clara felt the weight of it, understanding that his words represented not just personal feeling, but consideration of what their potential union might mean for both communities. I would need time, she said finally, not because I don't value your character and friendship, but because this decision affects many beyond just ourselves. He nodded, having expected nothing less thoughtful from her. The moon will complete many cycles before the railroad brings its greatest changes. There is time for hearts to find their true path. With formal courtesy, he added, I ask only that you consider the possibility. After he departed, Clara remained on the porch, her thoughts turning to the unexpected journey that had brought her to this moment. When she had boarded that train, in Pittsburgh, she had sought security through marriage to a stranger, believing it her only option for providing stability for her sons. Now she stood as an independent professional, respected landowner, and vital community member, considering a relationship based not on desperate need, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. The irony wasn't lost on her. Rejection by Dr. Blackwood had ultimately opened the door to a life far richer than anything he could have offered. Had she married him as planned, she would have been merely the doctor's wife in a small frontier town, her medical knowledge used only at his discretion, her sons perhaps tolerated but never truly valued for their unique spirits. Instead, she had found her own path, one that honored both her professional abilities and her role as a mother. The quadruplets, once viewed as burdens, had become bridges between communities, their natural openness to both cultures creating connections no adult diplomacy could have achieved. As stars wheeled overhead and night creatures sang their chorus. From the surrounding forest, Clara Sullivan contemplated not just Black Wolf's unexpected declaration, but the larger truth it represented, that life's greatest fulfillment often comes not from clinging to predetermined plans, but from the courage to embrace unexpected paths with an open heart. The frontier had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately transformed her. Whatever the future might hold, whether partnership with Black Wolf or continued independence, she faced it not as the desperate widow who had stepped from that train, but as a woman who had found her true strength in the very rejection that had once seemed her greatest defeat. The healing touch, first recognized by a Cherokee chief, had become her defining gift, not just in treating physical ailments, but in mending the deeper wounds between peoples who had more to gain from understanding than division. In this unexpected calling, Clara Sullivan had found not merely survival, but profound purpose that would echo through generations to come. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't. Want to pass these up? Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.